Hello humans, Alison and Toni here with BlueLion for yet another little tidbit of information to keep you smart. Today we are going to talk about the different ways in which you can deduct for employees when you know that they're going to be on a leave or when they do take a leave. So these are your payroll deductions for things like medical, vision, dental, your benefits, things you're reducing from the employee's paycheck in order to cover those costs. So whether you know if someone's going to be out in advance, whether it's short notice or, typically we categorize them in 3 different ways in which you can take these deductions.
Yeah. So as Alison said, the first way, and what I say is always the best way, really, is if you notified ahead of time that an employee needs to take a leave, which is always the hope, is that someone can schedule if they need to take a surgery or if they have to be out because they're going to have a baby.
Having a baby.
Yep, that's a big one. Planning those deductions ahead of time. So what that looks like is, on average, you have a general idea at least of how long somebody is going to be on leave, depending on, right, of how far in advance they're going to let you know. So
6 weeks for a knee surgery recover.
Yes.
8 weeks for baby.
12 weeks if you're taking FMLA, if you qualify for 50 or more employees, whatever that looks like. If you're able to take it ahead of time, that's great. And what that looks like is literally calculating out how far in advance you're aware of the information and taking the deduction per pay period. How many pay periods is an employee going to miss? Multiplying that and then figuring that out for the rate. We always tell you that by law, you need to, in the state of New Hampshire, make sure employees are signing off, that they know that those deductions are getting taken in advance. So that they're aware of what's going on. It's easy for you to track how many there are. There's documents that can help you kind of make sure that information is very smooth and easy to track, which is great.
It's also really important to keep in mind, based on how much your employees are earning, that there is only a certain amount that you are eligible to withhold. So depending on how much notice you get and what kind of benefits they're having deducted and how much that is, this is important for when you start talking about dependent care accounts. So making sure you know what those limits are so you're not deducting too much, because there is a requirement of the amount of money the employee must take home from their paycheck after you've taken these type of deductions.
Absolutely. The second kind of way that you can do a deduction is while an employee is out on a leave. So they say, nope, I don't want you to double deduct me beforehand. I rather pay while I'm out on a leave. That gets a little bit more cumbersome, I personally feel, because when they're paying you when they're on leave, because they're not collecting a paycheck from the employer, they're paying you with post-tax money. If you're utilizing a Section 125 pre-tax plan, I'm giving you money I've already been taxed on. So making sure that you're working with your payroll provider, which is why I said it's a little more cumbersome because it's more kind of legwork, to track that the collections that you've taken are post-tax income from the employee on those deductions, so it reflects accurately on their W-2 statement at the end of the year. So that usually involves invoicing the employee or giving them an invoice before they leave, and then writing you a check, photocopying the check, putting the check in the account and making sure you're tracking it that way.
It also sometimes, depending on what the employee is out for, causes some logistical issues. Let's say they were going out for maternity leave, unfortunately ended up having to have a C-section or a cesarean, and they're not able to commute or not able to come in, but they were planning on dropping off that payment. Or they're out for knee surgery and they can't drive. So depending on what the leave is for, sometimes logistically it doesn't make sense to have them sending in checks, whether they're mailing them or dropping them off physically. So keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely. The third way to do it is they've come back from work and you're basically doubling the deduction or adding on to what the standard deduction is every pay period to catch them up. So this is a catch-up payment is how we kind of classify it. So they come back, they've missed 3 or 4 pay periods, you take those deductions and you either divide them in half, so you're doing an extra half of a pay period every single time, or you're doubling it depending on what the employee feels comfortable with. Again, this needs to be signed off on because the employee needs to know what's happening to their paycheck every single time that you're making a change to the deduction. It's required by law, so make sure that they're signing off on that, but it's another thing to pay attention to, and as Alison said, paying attention to those maximums and how much the employee is taking in their check every single week. So that's another added piece of it.
One of the cons of this third option is sometimes we think we know what is going to happen when someone goes on a leave, but do we ever really know? So a great example of this is that maternity leave. So you may have an employee that has every intention of coming back to work after maternity. They have sworn up and down they would never leave your company, but for some reason when they hold that little bundle of joy and look in their baby's eyes, they're like, not coming back. So in those instances where you've now covered their benefits and carried them on benefits and they're not coming back, that poses a little bit more of a challenge. So making sure you're going in eyes wide open of what the outcome could be. You know, a lot of leaves, it's not just maternity leave, so maybe it's a scheduled surgery or things like that where they're definitely coming back. Those are also good options too.
Absolutely. And there's also times when an employee, if they are out and you're expecting their payment on that second option, depending on the length of time that they're out, obviously it's all about communication and letting them know what the expectation is. So before they go out, letting them know, you know, if I don't receive your payment, this is how much time I'll give as a grace period. You need to be communicating with me. If I don't hear anything, we might have to put you on COBRA. Letting the employee know what's going on. It doesn't hurt them to tell them the expectation ahead of time. You're not threatening them. If you don't pay me, you're gonna go, you know, I'm gonna do this to you. It's letting them know. Listen, we know things happen. Stay in communication with us. If it's text, if it's email, if it's voicemail, if it's, you know what I mean, FaceTime, whatever it could be, communicating with us so we know what's going on is always going to be the most important thing to keep this moving smoothly so that the employee feels good, the employer feels protected and good, and that everybody is on the same page.
Yep. Don't forget to like and share our videos, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. Alison and Toni from BlueLion.